regarded the election process as a very long job interview. And in the job I've got, it's a very difficult flow chart. But my boss is everybody in Saanich-Gulf Islands.
That's correct.
My boss is not the Green Party. And it's the first thing I told my federal council. They said, how are you going to divide your time between your work as Green Party leader and your MP? My number one priority is to represent the voters of Saanich-Gulf Islands to the best of my ability. And everybody's not always going to agree on everything, but that's like, it's critical. One of the things we need to do, I've got a private member's bill on this right now too. And I'm hoping another MP will bring forward a similar bill so it can get voted on, because I really want to get my Lyme disease bill passed this fall, and I may not get a crack at 2 bills. But to make the long story short, the source of power to a party leader to force their members to vote the way they want, say what they say, and so on, comes from the Elections Act requirement that the party leader sign the nomination papers for every candidate. That's an easy change. We need to get rid of that. We need to reduce the power of political parties altogether, and particularly reduce the power of political party leaders. We need to encourage members of Parliament, as you're saying, this business of, the Constitution of Canada says members of Parliament, well, it doesn't quite say it very clearly, but political parties aren't mentioned in our Constitution. So when it describes members of Parliament, we represent certain members from different regions. There's nothing in there about political parties. There's nothing in the Constitution about the Prime Minister's office. It's not like the White House that was, the U.S. has separation of powers. There's the White House, there's the Congress, there's the judiciary. It's all laid out in their Constitution. Our Constitution doesn't mention the Prime Minister's office. It's an abomination. It's a monstrous, cancerous growth that started under Pierre Trudeau in a fairly mild way, and under Stephen Harper it's gone like that. So we can, in fact, demand that members of Parliament represent their constituents, and one of the things we need to do is educate the media. Letters to the editor help. If you look at media coverage of political party leaders, you'll find they are praised to the skies by the political panel people for what they call party discipline, message discipline. If you have a caucus where people act out, and they say, oh, your leadership is in trouble, one of the reasons, because I'm not all that partisan about things, but one of the reasons I yearned for more MPs who are green is that there's no other way for me to prove to everybody that we'll never have whipped votes than if there's more than me. You see, it's very hard for me to prove that I'm allowed to disagree with myself.
You can vote twice.
That's hard. Actually, none of these jobs were ever done by anybody, because the jobs are, okay, so the Prime Minister's office last year had a $10 million a year budget. Everybody who works there works to ensure conservative victory in the next election. What they do is they've now broken down, how many of you have previous experience in either provincial or federal government? So I'm just curious. Anybody here having any experience? Because what we used to have was the Privy Council office being like the Deputy Minister's office of the Prime Minister. The Clerk of Privy Council was the boss of the civil service. Deputy Ministers reported, at least operationally, through their minister to Cabinet, but also in terms of how the civil service operated, Deputy Ministers also had a line to the Clerk of Privy Council. And there was a very clear demarcation between the Prime Minister's office, which was political, and the Privy Council office, which was civil service, expert, professional advice, policy making, developing evidence. What's happened now is that the wall between PMO and PCO is down. So these guys, and girls, I suppose, they're both. John Beard took me to task because I asked in question period about the lack of accountability in the Prime Minister's office. I said, $10 million a year of a budget for people, and I refer to them as the guys in short pants who go around harassing civil servants, bullying MPs, and muzzling scientists. And John Baird stood up and objected and said I'd been sexist because there were also women in the Prime Minister's office. So I said, well, look, I use the term that the conservative backbenchers use, guys in short pants, and I'm more than prepared to accept that the Honourable Minister is correct, that there are also women in the Prime Minister's office harassing civil servants, bullying MPs, and muzzling scientists. But there's no accountability for these people. They didn't do jobs anyone ever did because we've never had such a controlling, we never had nobody on the political side, I mean, as I worked in Mulroney's government, no one on the political side of the minister's office could randomly call into any department and start saying, you, what are you doing? We need you to produce a report that says this. You know, it's what's happening now is that Stephen Harper is dismantling the proper functioning of civil service and the demarcations against political activities. So I would love to say that we could have, I mean, I've put forward in various articles that and I wrote to Mr. Flaherty as input to his budget exercise, that the Prime Minister's budget should be cut in half at least. That would be down to $5 million. There's some evidence that they're using the Prime Minister's office to have telemarketing going out to say, I'm calling from the Prime Minister's office, can you increase your donation to the Conservative Party? So, yeah, it's not an accountable outfit. And we don't even know how many people work there or what they earn. We just know the global budget. Most of the Prime Minister's office budget is on salaries. That we know. But we don't know, you know, who's earning what. This is one of the things that would have come to light had Brent Rathgaber's bill not been